guys, so this is going to be the final lecture of Module 8. I've been sending material out to you guys about kind of what's taking place. So this will be the final lecture. So you have all of the notes in front of you from the first lecture, lecture 1, all of those notes. You have the PowerPoint. Please make sure that you print out those notes if you have the chance to. Just print them out and have them with you. Go over them. We'll do some type of review on Wednesday, and then your test on Module 8, which will be similar to the one you took from Module 7, probably some multiple choice and true, false, maybe a little bit of matching, will be on Thursday. And that will get us to the end of the 5th week of the Triad, which is crazy, and on Friday we start getting into and talking about issues with the Civil War. So we're going to just briefly go through some stuff here with Andrew Jackson and kind of wrap up the last page in a third of notes or so. And we're going to move right in here with the Indian Removal Act. So Andrew Jackson, if you remember from our last lecture, he is now President of the United States. He had previously lost out because he felt he was cheated in what was called a corrupt bargain between John Adams and Henry Clay, and rightfully so, he may have been, but he makes up for it in the next election when he overwhelmingly wins. Now the problem is, Andrew Jackson is not a big fan of Native Americans. If you look at the history of Andrew Jackson, he's a known Native American fighter. He would chase Native Americans into Florida, which was owned by Spain decades ago, and go after them when they would invade small towns on the Georgia-Florida border. So he has decided to remove an entire group of individuals known as the Cherokee Indians on what's called the Trail of Tears. So in the 1820s, you've got all of these settlers coming in, right? And they want all of this land. And they're pushing into this territory. And Native Americans are there, okay? People that have previously been there were there, and there's tons of cotton. We call this the Cotton Belt. And Native Americans were in control of this land. So if you can kind of see with these notes, you've got the Seminole tribe down here, the Uchi, the Cherokee, the Creek, the Chickasaw. So they are spread out over portions of this territory that we are moving into, right? That we are taking over, that we are becoming part of the United States. So President Jackson basically comes in with this idea called the Indian Removal Act, okay? It comes into play, and Native Americans are basically forced off of their land, okay? They were forced off of their land, and they had to push past the Mississippi River, which was basically territory that was very desolate at this time. We didn't know much about it, and you have the Mexican, Mexico owns a lot of territory out there as well, so they're really being put into some bad spots, okay? They receive less land than they've given up, and it's known as the Trail of Tears. So when you look at these notes where it says Trail of Tears, I just kind of want you to see the 1, 2, 3 on how this works out. Number 1, they round up about 15,000 Indians. This is a forceful roundup, okay? If you've ever paid attention to recent, history or since this time, Native Americans feel very slighted at times by the United States of America. And this is your first example as to why, okay? The concept of rounding them up and pushing them off of this land in Georgia, okay? We wanted to use it for cotton, but we gave an excuse that there was gold there, and we pushed them out, okay? So here you can see them kind of being rounded up. We force a march on them. So they leave from this part of Georgia, and we force a march to what is basically present-day Oklahoma, okay? We force them there, and about 25% of them will die, okay, on this march. Now this is not some kind of just march where they have any ability to stop or to relax. They are pushed, and on either side of them is members of the United States military, okay? So these people are being pushed and pushed and pushed faster and farther than they've ever gone before. The elderly clearly are going to struggle here. If you have a disease, if you have an injury of some sort and it becomes infected, there's a chance you may die. And 25% of these Cherokee Indians pass away, okay? It's a tragic story. It's an example of this situation where the U.S. government and the U.S. military forces people out, and now you can see why, when you look throughout history, there's a lot of tension between Native Americans and the United States government. Okay, so let's go back into taxes and kind of move our way back. Okay, Congress passes this massive tariff on European goods. Okay? The whole purpose of a tax on goods from another country is so you buy American. Okay? The hope was you would purchase things from these northern factories, and rather than buying an item from England or Germany, which might be better quality, it's going to cost more. So you'll go and purchase an item from someone that works at a factory down the street from you, right? The idea is to buy American. So you've got these textile workers here that you kind of see, and the problem is the South does not have a decent relationship with the North, and they depend upon those goods from Europe. And now they are caught between paying for these items up in the North that are expensive, and now not being able to get European goods because of the tariffs. Okay? They call it a tariff of abomination. An abomination is like a horrific thing that's happening. So clearly the South is upset with what's going on. Okay? This is going to go on for 4 years. Okay? This tariff is going to last for 4 years, and it is going to tear up the South when it comes to manufactured goods. The South and the North, that division is widening. Okay? We know slavery is a massive issue. Now we see manufacturing is a massive issue. Now the United States government is telling them you have to impose these taxes on goods coming in from Europe, and there's a lot of tension. Okay? The average tariff rate on items here, you just kind of see how high it got. Okay? Look at how high at points the tariff was, and then it's dropped off to where it's very low in 1990, okay, which is when I went to high school, if you can believe that. So this just kind of gives you an idea of what the chart looks like, okay. Flipping on to and getting into the next page of notes, South Carolina basically says we're not going to enforce this law. South Carolina basically puts the United States government to the test and says we will not enforce this tariff, okay. They threaten to secede. To secede means to leave, okay, and they threaten to leave the U.S. government or the United States of America, if they are forced to collect these taxes because they depend on these European goods, okay? President Jackson is enraged. Cute little photo here. He is rather upset. How can those people from South Carolina dictate to me when I'm in charge and this is how it's going to be? And he really thought that South Carolina was trying to undercut what the Union was a part of, which was buying American and not focusing on European goods. South Carolina wasn't having any of it. So President Jackson says, I'm going to send the military down there. I'm going to send 50,000 troops. We're going to put them in all your major cities. We're going to put them on the ports. You're going to see these United States soldiers everywhere, and they're going to make sure that any good from Europe, they pay that tariff of abominations. Okay? Henry Clay comes in, though. All right? He calms people down. If there's one thing Henry Clay was good at, was making both sides kind of come to some type of agreement, all right? And we did reduce some of those tariffs, okay? Some of them were reduced. South Carolina says, okay, we won't leave the Union. So a question has been asked to me sometimes, would they really have left before the issue of slavery and the Civil War over taxes? And I would say no. This is kind of a power play move, if that makes sense, where you're testing, your pride. You guys love to do this to us, teachers, your parents, people you care about. You poke at them until you see when they react. And the United States government did react. And South Carolina got a compromise and they backed off. Okay? We're going to stay out of war with the South for 28 years until the Civil War begins. So South Carolina kind of poked at that bear, and now you see where we're at. Clearly, we're going to get into the slavery tensions. This is something that's going to dominate our lectures and our things that we talk about in the coming weeks when you guys are hopefully coming back. It'll be exciting to see you guys soon. And we've got men like Nat Turner, who you were about or you read about in your questions, who leads a bloody slave rebellion in Virginia. They go after their white slaveholders. They kill them, and then they are going to be rounded up as well. Okay, Nat Turner is captured, they're hanged, and they are shot. All right, this is a very, very tense situation, isn't it? The loss of life is tragic, and now you have these white slave owners and these black slaves going at each other, and you have all of this tension and death and murder, and something has to be done, right? And what do you know? The South tries to cover it up. The South basically says, well, we're not going to let anyone post anti-slavery literature. If someone wants to come down and do a conference about anti-slavery, we're not going to let them talk in parts of the South. And it got so bad that there was even a gag rule put in place. What this means is if you were a senator or representative in the United States Capitol and you wanted to talk about slavery, you were not allowed to. You were limited in your speech in terms of what you wanted to discuss. The idea was to brush it under the rug, right? Well, if we don't talk about it, no one will realize the horrific things going on in the South at this time, and it'll be business as usual. That was the hope. And we know that's not how it's going to end, because we will go to war over this, okay? John Adams fought against the gag rule. President Jackson kind of just said, I'm not going to worry about it, and this is going to last, okay? Abolitionists step up, Jackson doesn't worry about it, and this goes on for 8 years. If you can't really tell with this picture, it's a person, it could be a slave, I guess, with a chain over their mouth, all right, not being able to talk. So if I was some northern representative and I wanted to speak out against all the horrific things going on in the South at this time in the 1820s and 30s, I was not able to talk. The gavel would come down, I could be forcibly removed from the chamber if I tried to speak out against it, and that's how business was, okay? We get to the end of Jackson's years then, on the last page of the notes, okay? He possibly was going to seek a third term, but he was in poor health, so he chose not to. He may have won. Again, the popular vote, the people, the regular individual could relate to this man, so he might have won, but he chose not to run, okay? And a couple things about Jackson. He was shot in a duel, and we get to the end of him in his life, okay? Jackson did speak on behalf of the common man, but you should know this by now because he was a common man. He may not have had the best intentions when it came to Native Americans, like we just talked about in the Trail of Tears, or perhaps with the South when he threatens to use the military to oppose attacks, but he did relate to the common man, okay? This is his wife, Peggy Eaton, and Jackson supported spread of democracy. Notice it is simply down to white male property owners. We have a whole group of new amendments and things that will be added to the Constitution to allow blacks, women, U.S. citizens, naturalized, unnaturalized, all of these things will be added as we go on throughout history. But he did promote people getting the chance to vote, and he did hold the nation together, okay? He did the best he could. You've got the North and the South. He's trying, it's almost like putting a Band-Aid on things, and he defies the U.S. Supreme Court and throws them off those lands. So clearly this is one of those things I told you about though. People were okay with it. Something just happened to our pictures here, and that's okay because there's only one more thing left on the bottom there. He did nothing with the slavery issue, okay? The slavery issue is one of those, if you don't hear about it or talk about it, maybe it'll just go away. And you should know, and we know, and you've learned about it in junior high up to this point, that it's not going to go away, okay? And this is an issue that we are going to tackle head on as we push forward into Module 9 and Module 10 of this book, of this U.S. history book. So these are your 3 lectures with all of the notes that you should have, along with the PowerPoint if you'd like to ever just kind of skim through it and look at the questions and some of the pictures that I tried to show you. You can look at them on your own as well if you aren't able to see them that well because of the quality of this lecture in this video. So we've got all those things done. Be on the lookout for some review stuff tomorrow where I talk about the test and maybe have some other examples and things for us to do, and then prepare for your test to take place on Thursday, okay? Talk to you guys soon. Hopefully I get to see you guys soon, and we'll be in touch. See ya.